Hello friends, welcome to the Jazz Ranch, hip cats and groovy chicks. I'm going to be talking about diminished chords and how to use them in tunes. Now these are diminished chords that function differently than the Barry Harris method of diminished sixth scale approaches, but they are approach chords, and I want to show you how to use them, a few examples in tunes, but specifically more so in a tune I'm going to play for you called Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered. I'm going to play the song for you now. It has quite a few diminished chords in it. I'm going to analyze those for you after I play it. So here we go with a great song called Bewitched. Here we go. Okay, welcome to the Jazz Ranch Studio, where I talk about what I played, and I'm going to be talking about the diminished chords and how I use them in this song. But I want to give you a little bit of information about diminished chords first. Now, I call it, in a way, it's called the mystery chord. It's the most confusing chord, I think, in music in a lot of ways, because often you see it on scores and it doesn't really have the right bass note. It's an inversion. Now the reason for that is the fact that there's really only 3 diminished chords, and then they're just inversions of each other. So if you take 3 chords and you invert them 4 times, or you invert them 3 times so that you have 4 chords, you have 3 times 4. So in other words, a C diminished is the same as an E flat diminished and a G flat diminished and an A diminished. And so on. So I like to call the diminished chords three families: the C family, the F family, and the G family. And all you have to do is form a diminished chord within that family, and then you understand what the other diminished chords are. But they're just inversions of a C diminished, an F diminished, and a G diminished. So those are the three families of 4 chords each. And they're just inversions of each other. So what's the bass note? Well, that's the important thing to understand, how it's actually functioning. How is the diminished chord functioning? So let's take an example, and I'll show you a couple of things. Let's start out with the Barry Harris use of diminished chords in his diminished 6th scale. And it's this scale. It has the C scale with the A flat in there. And this is really a way to approach inversions of a major scale or a major chord or a minor chord. A major 6th chord or a minor 7th chord or a minor 6th chord. In other words, it's just like C6 inverted 3 times, and the approach chords to it, to those, So it's a way of maneuvering, interestingly, in a major scale or a minor scale to its related chords and their inversions, related C chord or C6 chord or A minor 7 chord. And I have videos on that, so I don't want to go into it in depth right now. I just want to show you the difference between his system and the use of diminished chords in this tune, Bewitched, and other tunes similar to this. Let's look at it in terms of the tune now. So you have this. Let's just look at a simple version of the tune. If you had the melody. You'd have this: C major 7, D minor 7, E flat minor 7, F major 7. So you're going right up the scale tone. You're right in the key of C, going up the scale tone. So you have C major 7 or C6, doesn't matter, to D minor 7, to E minor 7, then E7 to F major. So there, rising movement in a chord progression. Now, what happens is we put the diminished chord between those chords that are in the chord progression. So from C major 7, we're going to go to C, up a half step to C sharp diminished, which takes us to D minor 7, then up to E flat diminished, which takes us to E minor 7, or it could be C6 inverted. And then the E7 goes automatically to the F major. There's no diminished chord in there. So now it sounds like, instead of let's hear the first version like this. Now let's put the diminished chords in. I put an extra note in the melody there. Okay, now, you see, I put the extra note in the melody because when I got to the D diminished, that was the melody. And there's a rub there, so I made it fit, like, So that's my little thing that I put in there, my own little thing I added to the melody. Sometimes you want to do this. And this is mostly to illustrate why that diminished chord sounds good there. You see this kind of ascending with diminished chords in between sounds really nice. And it's the same kind of ascending diminished chords that you have in the song Ain't Misbehavin, like this. There's your D sharp diminished, or C sharp diminished. There's your D sharp diminished. And then you have a, you see, so you have the same type of progression using diminished chords in Ain't Misbehavin'. So that's the first thing I want to show you about this song. Now, the other thing is to have descending, that shows ascending diminished chords in a tune, in two examples of two tunes there actually. Now I'm going to show you a descending version of it, and it's in the same song because you get up to here on the F. You have the, let's try it. I'm sorry, we're going to. I'm still ascending with diminished. And then I put a C chord there. Now here's a D sharp or an E flat diminished chord approaching in a way that is descending. You see, so E flat diminished or D sharp, the same chord we used to ascend, now we can use to descend. There's a rub. Yeah. You know, take the diminished chord out, but the diminished chord makes it more interesting, right? And so classical composers use the diminished chord all the time, and this is a good example of using diminished chords in a jazz tune. Now here's another one. And that's really the Barry Harris use of it there, because it's approaching the F system, which is relative to D minor, so that would be really an A7 flat 9, you know, inverted, which is D flat diminished approaching D minor. So there again you have the D flat diminished or C sharp diminished approaching the D minor. You see, now I don't know if this is, you're totally confused by this now, but I'm showing you, you can download this score and look at it and study it. But I want to give you another example of a descending diminished chord use, and that would be on Someday My Prince Will Come. You have this. I'm in F, key of F, right here. See, that was the diminished chord there. See, there's your A flat diminished. Now, the melody note is not in the chord, but it's in the scale. You see, and this is used often. It's a very hip way of using a melody and putting a diminished chord to it. And this is a diminished chord that's descending. So it's moving from A flat diminished to G minor 7. We're in the key of F now, so that's the 2 chord going to 5. So A flat diminished, F chord to, with an A in the bass. You see, bass line movement, A wants to move to A flat chromatically. And then the melody note. You see, so when you get used to using diminished chords, you're really getting into sophisticated harmonization. And so you want to understand how they function, not only in the Barry Harris system, you know, so that you can, or you can do, you know, like these, you know, these interesting progressions, you know, where you're harmonizing in interesting ways, approaching melodically from a half step below in a diminished chord, approaching some form of a minor chord or 6 chord, major 6 chord, but also to use them in chord progressions as a way to have a more interesting progression by adding chromatic approach tones. And every diminished chord is really functioning as a 5, as well as a root position diminished chord. Like for instance, in this example, C chord, right? C sharp, going to D minor, C sharp diminished now, going to D minor. That diminished chord is really functioning, but in a chromatic way, but it's an inversion of an A7, which is 5 of D minor, like this. You know? And then D sharp is like the same thing. It's like a B7 approaching an E. You see? You see, so these diminished chords elusively are also 5 chords with flat 9s. So I will talk more about this in another video, but I want to keep this short and just show you some examples. Now, one other example I'm going to use is you'll hear a song like that. You might hear it played as C chord, C diminished to D minor. It's really an E flat. You see, so when you go through your charts in your songs, you want to see really where those diminished chords, how they're functioning in terms of their movement, where they're moving to, what is the real actual root. So, we'll sign off now. Thanks so much for joining me today on this view of the song Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered, and breaking it down as far as the use of diminished chords. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. Please write to me. I love to hear from you, and I always respond to comments if you give me enough time. And until next time, I'll say in the words of my great friend upstairs, Hermie Dressel, swing loose. And we'll see you next time around. Bye-bye.